At this point, you should have already entered your wages and quotas table, and you should have your worksheets grouped Sunday through Saturday. If you group these worksheets, everything that you do on one worksheet is going to be duplicated on all the others. And because you're performing identical functions, you actually only have to enter all these things once. We'll copy it and it'll all be completed for all the other worksheets. So it's important that all your worksheets are grouped, and when you group them, that you enter these other columns so that we can do the calculations for base pay, commission, gross, whether or not the quota was met, and whether or not that person worked today. So the big issue is using this Vlookup function and using the if function. And when we get to commission, you see that we have this very complex function. And I'm going to walk through these with you step by step. So the first thing that we're told is that a person who has a classification of AM and who has worked 8 hours is going to be paid $23.50. So what we have to do is we have to look up on our wages and quotas table someone whose classification is equal to AM, which happens to be the value stored in C2, and multiply that resulting value, which is located in 1, 2, 3, column 3, there's their hourly wage, and multiply it by the hours worked. So that's what we're going to do in this particular function. Now you'll notice when I clicked on wages and quotas, it's a function, it is a worksheet that's outside of our range, so we have to go back and group our worksheets again. The other thing that you'll notice is I have referred to a named range called wages and quotas in the worksheet wages and quotas. I did this because we're going to use this over and over and over again, and typing in an absolute cell address is cumbersome. So if you look at the formulas ribbon and the name manager, you can see that I have named a range wages and quotas, and it refers to the cells A3 through E7 absolute. And indeed, this is going to be the lookup table that you're going to be using every time. So the Vlookup, first of all, wants to know what value are we looking up? What are we going to use for our comparison? Here you can see that our lookup value is going to be the cell location C2. That's where our classification is. And we can use that classification then over in the wages and totals worksheet to find the value that's located in column 3. That's the column index number, and column 3 contains the hourly wage. So we started with F2, which is the hours worked, and we multiplied it by the hourly wage that we found in the wages and quotas table. So we did a Vlookup using the classification in the wages and totals worksheet to find the third column, 1, 2, 3, where the hourly wage is stored. And again, every time you click off of one of those, you've got to regroup those worksheets. So that's not too bad. We did our base pay. Now the commission is much more complex. The commission requires that, first of all, we had to reach our sales quota. So we have to look up and see what our sales quota is and determine if, according to the number of hours worked, we actually exceeded our sales quota. And your book tells you that the people get a commission, their sales quota is per hour. So if they worked, if they're the quota on wages and quota is actually $200 per hour. So we have to multiply that times the number of hours worked, and then they get a commission based upon anything that is over that. So in this case, she worked 8 hours. Her quota is $200 an hour, so her sales had to be $1,600, and anything over $1,600 gets a commission of, in her case, 3%. So we're going to have two things we have to look up. We're going to use AM, which was located in cell C2, to look up column index 4 for our sales quota, multiply that times the hours worked, then subtract that from the actual sales and multiply that times the commission rate, which we also have to look up. So follow this closely. So based on that information, we're going to not only use an if statement, but within the if statement we're going to use nested Vlookup statements. Now again, Vlookup just means vertical lookup, and we're going to use our classification to look up the various values that we need to calculate this commission. So the first thing is if. If the value in E2, which is sales, is greater than column index 4, which is our quota, times F2, which is the hours worked. So the first thing we had to see, if her sales, E2, were greater than 8 times 200. That is a true statement. So in an if statement, remember, the second thing that you get is if the value is true. So her sales times her sales total is $1,600, and that is greater than $4,000. Therefore, we want to calculate the commission. That's going to be E2, which is her sales, minus her quota times the hours worked, which would be $1,600, times the value in cell column index 5, which is the commission rate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, her commission rate. And therefore, we now have figured the commission. Again, the sales total has to be greater than her number of hours worked times her quota per hour, which was $200. We use the Vlookup to find those using the classification. If that was true, then she gets a commission based upon the amount of the sales that is more than her quota of $1,600. The else side of this is, let's see, the else side would be 0. Sorry, I had a mistake there, and it was in the parentheses. So you'll notice if you've got to have your parentheses matching, and Excel gives you the color so you can see where they match. So we have to start the if statement with an open parentheses here. The Vlookup statement has to have an open parentheses and a closed parentheses here. Then in order for this to be multiplied correctly, we have to find our Vlookup, subtract that from E2, then multiply that times F2, then multiply that times our commission percentage. You have to have those parentheses in the right places as well. Finally, what I was trying to tell you is, then if all this is false, we want simply a 0 to be placed in the commission cell. So I went back again, and I'm going to copy this because I did not have my pages or my worksheets grouped. So I'm going to copy, paste that back so it'll be on all of our worksheets. The gross pay then is very simple. Again, let's group our worksheets. The gross pay is simply the value of the base pay in G2 plus the value of the commission in H2, and that gives us our gross pay. So we want to type that in so we have that for both of our cell addresses, our worksheets. And the quota met is an if statement. Now, an if statement, again, I think we did this in exercise 1. All we're saying is if the first statement is true, then we'll do the first value, or we'll display the first value, else we'll display the second value. So if the quota was met, we're looking to see if there's a commission stored in H2. So if it's greater than 0, then yes, else it would print no. So we need to type this one in again so that it'll be on all our worksheets. So we start it with if the value in H2 is greater than 0, then we're going to type in the word yes to display, else we're going to type in the word no to display. And exactly the same is true for your hours worked. If hours worked, which is stored in cell J2, no, I'm sorry, cell in F2 is greater than 0, then we want yes to be displayed, else we want no to be displayed. Now you'll notice when we go to our other worksheets, guess what? It's all been entered there correctly because the worksheets were grouped. It's a very simple process then, because we named our range for wages and quotas and it is an absolute cell address. We can now simply copy all of these formulas and paste them one time, and the values are for us on all of the worksheets. Not nearly as bad as it looked.